Montana Territory, August 1882. The sound of hooves pounding against the dry earth echoed through the Bitterroot Valley as the sun broke over the ridgeline. Dust rose behind a lone rider, his wide-brimmed hat shadowing his face, but not the steel in his eyes. His name was Owen Traver, and he had not come to forget. He pulled his horse to a stop just outside of the abandoned ranch house, where the porch sagged and weeds choked the yard. The place still smelled like pine and old memories. He swung down, boots hitting the ground hard, and glanced toward the barn where the roof had half collapsed. It had been 10 years since he last stood on this land. 10 years since he had watched her ride away. Inside the house, Brooke Kessler stood still as glass, her hand pressed to the worn door frame. She had heard the horse. She peeked through the curtains and saw him sun-browned skin, shoulder-length dark hair, and that same quiet strength in the way he stood. She felt her knees weaken. She had not expected to see Owen again, not after the world had dragged them in 2 directions, not after what her father had done. "Carver, Camilla," Brooke called softly. Her children, both under 10, came padding down the stairs, barefoot and curious. "Go out back. Stay near the creek. Do not come back until I call you." Her son, Carver, narrowed his eyes. "Is someone here?" Brooke nodded. "Just an old friend. Go on now." When she opened the door, Owen was already halfway up the steps. He stopped short when he saw her, really saw her hair darker now, pulled back in a messy braid, a faded cotton dress clinging to her thin frame. She looked worn, tired, but still beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. "I heard this place was empty," he said, voice low. "It was," she answered. "I came back last winter, had nowhere else." Owen looked past her into the house, then back at her eyes. "You live here alone," she hesitated. "With my children," his jaw clenched. "Their father is not in the picture," she said. "Never really was." Owen nodded once, slow. "You need help." Brooke crossed her arms, but her voice softened. "Why are you here, Owen?" He stepped up onto the porch, closer. "Because I never forgot." She swallowed hard. "They told me to forget you," she said, almost a whisper. Owen's eyes never left hers. "I never even tried." She looked away, blinking fast. He reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her breath caught. "I thought you hated me," she whispered. "I hated what they did to us," he said. "Not you." They stood like that for a long moment, the air thick with everything they had never said. Then Brooke turned and pushed the door open wider. "Come inside." Owen stepped in, ducking slightly under the doorframe. The house was small, quiet. The furniture was sparse but clean. He noticed 2 small beds in the corner room, quilts folded neatly. He looked back at her. "You have done well," he said. Brooke's lips twitched. "It has not been easy. I can see that." A crash outside made them both flinch. Brooke opened the back door and saw Carver, her son, trying to drag a heavy bucket of water while Camilla picked flowers nearby. Owen stepped out beside her. "You are raising them alone," she nodded. "Their father left when Camilla was 2. Did not even leave a note." Owen's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Carver saw him and stiffened. "Who is that?" Brooke walked over and dropped to one knee beside her son. "This is Owen. He is someone I used to know." Carver did not look impressed. "He got a gun." Owen crouched down beside him. "I do, too, actually, but I do not use them unless I have to." Carver narrowed his eyes. "You ride horses. Better than I walk. Can you shoot from horseback?" Owen smiled. "Yes." Carver blinked, then nodded once, like a man giving approval. "All right." Camilla tugged at Brooke's skirt. "Is he staying?" Brooke looked at Owen. "If you want me to," he said. Her eyes searched his face. "I do not want charity." "This is not charity," he said. "It is. Finally doing what I should have done a long time ago." That night, Owen slept in the barn, rolling out his bedroll in the loft. The air was cool, and he could hear the creek not far off. He lay awake for a long time, thinking about Brooke, the way her voice trembled when she said his name, the way she looked at him like maybe she still remembered too. In the house, Brooke sat by the cold hearth, holding a half-mended shirt in her lap. She kept thinking about the way Owen had looked at her children. No judgment, just quiet understanding. She had not felt safe in years. But something in her chest had stirred when he stepped onto her porch. The next morning, Owen was already chopping wood by the time the children woke. Carver ran out with eyes wide. "You are still here," Owen nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "I said I would help." Carver watched him work, then picked up a smaller log and started stacking. By the end of the week, the barn roof was patched, the garden fenced, and the well repaired. Owen worked without complaint, and every night at supper he sat at the table like he belonged there. Brooke watched it all with growing unease, not because she did not want him there, but because she did. Too much. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, she stepped out onto the porch where Owen was sitting, sipping from a tin cup. "I do not know what to do with you," she said. He looked up at her. "I am not asking for anything." "That is the problem," she said. "You never did. I wanted to back then, but your father made it clear." She sat down beside him. "He is long gone now, still kept me away." She turned to him. "I never stopped thinking about you," his breath caught. "I used to lie awake," she said, "wondering if you had moved on, married, had a family." "I did not," he said. "Could not." She looked down. "I tried to forget." He touched her hand. "I never even tried." She turned her hand to hold his. Their fingers laced slowly, surely. Inside the house, the children slept soundly. Outside, the stars came out one by one, and the old pain between them started to loosen. Brooke leaned her head on his shoulder. He rested his cheek against her hair. And for the first time in 10 years, the night felt kind. Brooke stood barefoot in the creek that morning, skirts bunched in one hand, the other trailing cool water up her arm. The breeze carried the scent of cottonwood and a sharp tang of wet stone. Across the narrow bend, Camilla crouched low, watching a beetle inch along a smooth rock. Carver was upriver, skipping stones with focused precision. The house behind them sat quiet, chimney dark. Owen had ridden out before dawn. She hadn't asked where he was headed. He'd left a note on the table, 3 words in steady handwriting. "Back by supper." She didn't know what unsettled her more, the steadiness of the words or the fact they were written at all. Owen never used to write her anything. He'd only look and she'd understand. "Ma," Camilla called, pointing. "That one's got wings." Brooke stepped closer, kneeling beside her daughter. "It's a mayfly," she said. "They don't live long." Camilla frowned. "Why not?" Brooke brushed hair from her daughter's forehead. "Because that's how they were made, but they do everything they need to while they're here." Camilla nodded solemnly, as though this was a kind of wisdom she might carry. By the time the sun dipped low enough to set fire to the western hills, the children had been fed and settled into their evening chores. Brooke stood at the porch rail, arms folded, watching the road. She told herself she wasn't waiting, just looking. The air had cooled and the cottonwoods whispered to each other in the wind. When Owen returned, he was leading a second horse, smaller and dappled gray, with a wide saddle blanket tied across its back. He dismounted and handed Brooke a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. "What's this?" "Figured you might need a few things," he said. "Took a job clearing stumps for the Anders farm up north. They paid decent." She opened the cloth slowly. Inside was a small sack of flour, a tin of coffee, a spool of thread, and a pair of sturdy leather boots no bigger than Camilla's feet. Her voice caught. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." She ran her fingers over the worn, soft leather. "These were made for a girl." They were. Traded for them in Hamilton. The shopkeep said they'd been sitting there months. She looked up. "You went all the way to town. Horse needed grain, and you needed boots." Brooke stepped back inside, placing the bundle on the table. Owen followed, removing his hat and setting it on the hook by the door. The house smelled of sage and warm bread, and a single lantern cast gold light over the floorboards. Carver looked up from where he was sharpening a stick with his pocket knife. "You bring anything for me?" Owen crouched down, pulling something from his saddlebag. "You ever seen something like this?" He held out a carved wooden whistle shaped like a bird, the wings etched with fine lines. Carver took it without a word, turning it in his hands. Then he gave a short puff. The high, clear note startled a laugh from Camilla. "Made that when I was about your age," Owen said. "Lost it behind the cook tent one year, thought it was gone for good. Found it again last week, stuck behind an old saddlebag." Carver nodded slowly. "Thanks." Owen stood, stretching his back. Brooke was watching him from the hearth, eyes unreadable. "You didn't come back just to patch roofs and bring toys," she said. "No," he answered. "Then why?" "I wanted to see if there was still a place here for me." She crossed the room and set her hand gently on his arm. "You think I can just forget the years in between?" "No," he said quietly. "But I think we can build something new if you want that." The lamp flickered. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. "I used to hate quiet nights like this," she said. "Too still. Too many thoughts. And now," she looked up at him, "now I don't mind them so much." He reached out slowly, touching the edge of her sleeve. "I never came back for what was easy. I came back because it's you." She didn't answer, just leaned into him, her forehead resting against his chest. His arms wrapped around her without hesitation, strong and warm. She stayed there until Camilla's voice broke the stillness from the bedroom loft. "Ma, you going to read the story?" Brooke smiled against Owen's shirt. "You'll stay?" she asked. "Till you ask me not to." She stepped back, and together they moved toward the children's room, the sound of the creek still whispering through the open windows. That night, Owen sat on the porch while Brooke read inside. The stars were thick overhead, and the air smelled of dry grass and sweet smoke. He leaned back, boots crossed at the ankle, and listened to her voice trail through the doorway. The weight in his chest, the one he'd carried for a decade, felt lighter. He didn't need to speak to know that something between them had shifted quietly, like a gate swinging open after a long winter. And this time, he wasn't going to let it close. The first frost came softly, touching the valley with silver breath. Brooke woke early, pulling a shawl around her shoulders before stepping outside. The grass crackled faintly beneath her boots. She crossed to the chicken coop, gathering eggs with practiced hands, her breath trailing in the chill. The mountains to the west glowed faintly as the sun gathered behind them. Owen was already at the corral, tightening the cinch on the bay mare. He looked up when she approached, nodding once. "Fence line sagging by the north field," he said. "I'll ride out and mend it before the sun climbs too high." "Take Carver with you," Brooke said, brushing hay from her sleeve. "He's been looking for a reason to skip handwriting." Owen gave a slow nod, then added, "He listens better when you're not watching." She almost smiled, but the weight of the morning held her still. "There's a letter," she said, "from my sister in Illinois. Says she's thinking to come west." Owen adjusted the stirrup leather without looking at her. "She know about the children?" "Only what I've told her. She'll ask questions." "Let her." Brooke hesitated. "I'm not afraid of her questions. I'm afraid of what she'll see." He met her gaze then, steady. "She'll see a woman who kept going." She looked down at her hands, rough from work and cold. "I don't want her pity." "Then don't take it." Carver came out, pulling on his jacket, hair still sleep-mussed. "You said we're riding." Owen nodded toward the saddle. "Grab the hammer and a coil of wire." As they rode out, Brooke stood watching them until they were specks against the hills, the boys' laughter faint on the wind. Inside, Camilla was kneeling by the stove, feeding kindling into the firebox. Brooke knelt beside her, brushing the girl's hair back with gentle fingers. "You remember your Aunt Clara?" she asked. Camilla shook her head. "She's coming soon. She may stay a while." The girl looked up. "Is Owen staying too?" Brooke drew in a breath. "I think he wants to." Camilla nodded, as if that settled something. By midday, Brooke was kneeling in the root cellar, sorting potatoes into baskets and listening to the soft creak of the house above. A soft knock at the door startled her. No wagon had passed. No dogs had barked. She opened it to find a man she hadn't seen in nearly 7 years. He stood tall, shoulders squared beneath a wool coat, a wide-brimmed hat dusted with road grit. Brooke, her jaw tensed. "Elias." He took off his hat, twisting it in his hands. "Heard from someone in town you were living back out here. Thought I'd see for myself." "You've seen, now go on." "I didn't come to make trouble," he said. "Just wanted to know if the girl's mine." Brooke's hands curled around the doorframe. "You gave up that right when you left. She has a name." "And she doesn't know yours." "She should." "No," she said, voice low. "She shouldn't." He blinked but didn't move. "I'm different now. That may be, but we're not." He looked past her toward the sound of Camilla's humming. "I could help. We don't need it." He hesitated a moment longer, then turned and walked down the steps, boots crunching gravel with each step. Brooke stood at the door long after he disappeared, her breath shallow, hands trembling. When Owen and Carver returned late afternoon, the boy ran ahead, cheeks flushed from wind and work. "We fixed 4 posts," he said proudly. "Owen let me hammer the last one." Brooke nodded and ruffled his hair, then watched as he disappeared inside, boots thudding lightly on the floorboards. Owen tied off the mare and came to stand beside her. "Someone been by," she nodded, arms crossed tight. "Elias." His face hardened, but he didn't speak. He asked if she was his. "What did you tell him?" "That she isn't." He studied her, eyes dark. "He come back again, I'll be here." Brooke nodded, then added, "I wasn't afraid." "I know." He paused. "But you were bracing." She breathed out slowly. "How do you know?" "Same way I knew not to speak your name for 10 years. They stood in silence for a moment until she said softly, "Will you sleep inside tonight?" He looked at her, something unreadable in his gaze. "You sure?" She nodded. "I am." That night, after the lamp was turned low and the fire banked, Owen slept on a straw mattress near the hearth. Brooke stood in the doorway, watching the quiet rise and fall of his chest. She reached for a quilt and laid it over him, her fingers brushing his arm. He stirred, eyes opening just enough to see her. "You all right?" "I am now." She turned to leave, but he caught her wrist gently. "Brooke." She looked back. "They told me to forget you," she said. Owen smiled, eyes full of the years they'd lost. "I never even tried." She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. He wrapped his hand around hers, the warmth of it anchoring her. In that quiet space between dark and dawn, the weight of all that had been unsaid settled at last into something tender and known. The following week brought a slow, steady thaw. The frost still clung to the north fence line in the early hours, but by midday, the soil turned soft underfoot and the creek ran faster with melt. Clara arrived in the late afternoon, her traveling trunk strapped behind the wagon seat and a scarf tied tight against her neck. The road had been slow going from Missoula, and her face was drawn from the cold, but her eyes, when they met Brooke's, were sharp as ever. "You look older," Clara said, stepping down without waiting for help. "So do you," Brooke replied, brushing her palms on her apron. The two stood for a moment, taking in what time had etched on the other. Then Clara gave a short nod and reached for her bag. Camilla peeked from behind the doorframe, her thumb hooked through a tear in her dress, eyes wide. Brooke motioned her forward. "This is Camilla," she said. "My youngest." Clara crouched stiffly, her joints unused to such motion. "You've got your mother's eyes." Camilla tilted her head. "Do you have children?" "No." Clara said. "Just a stubborn sister and a big trunk." That night the house was quiet over supper. Owen had taken his plate outside, offering no reason, only a small gesture toward the door as the sun slipped below the ridge. Brooke wanted to follow, but Clara's gaze kept her rooted. "You didn't say he was here," Clara said once the children had been sent to bed. "I didn't think I needed to." "He was part of why you left, wasn't he?" Brooke folded a dish towel slowly, smoothing the corners. "He was all of it." Clara leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. "And now," Brooke looked toward the window where Owen sat by the barn, lantern light casting soft gold over his hands. "Now he's here." Clara didn't speak right away. "Then people in town talk. They say his brother died in that shootout near Helena. He doesn't talk about it. Maybe he should." Brooke turned to face her. "You didn't come here to dig up what doesn't want uncovering. I came because you stopped writing. I had work. Children. You had silence." Brooke held her sister's gaze. "I had to learn how to keep going without explaining everything." Clara nodded once, slowly. "You always were better at living through things than talking about them." Later, once the fire burned low, Brooke stepped outside. Owen was still beside the barn, legs stretched out, a half-carved piece of wood in his hand. "She's not easy," Brooke said, sitting beside him on the upturned crate. "She's your sister. She doesn't have to be." He handed her the carving. It was a small fox, ears tilted forward, tail curled around its body. "For Camilla?" Brooke asked. Owen nodded. "Found the wood near the creek. Looked like it wanted to be something." She turned it in her hands. "You always saw things in pieces that I didn't." He watched her for a moment before speaking. "Your sister's worried I'll bring trouble. She doesn't know you. Most don't." Brooke set the fox in her lap. "You could have left after the barn was fixed, after the fence." "After Elias showed up, I could have," he said. "But I didn't." She looked at him. "Why?" "I meant what I said. I came back because it's you." They sat in silence until the wind shifted and the lantern flame inside the barn flickered out. "You ever think about starting over?" she asked. "This feels like it. I mean somewhere new, together." He didn't answer right away. Then, "Only if you wanted it." She looked down at the wooden fox in her hands. "I've never wanted anything more than I want quiet mornings and someone beside me when winter hits hard." He reached out, brushing the tips of his fingers against hers. "Then we'll make it." Brooke's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. She turned her hand, letting his fingers settle between hers, their palms warm against the cool night. Inside, Clara stood by the window, watching them. Her mouth pressed into a thin line, but her eyes softened. The moon rose high, silvering the rooftops and the fields beyond. And on that porch, in the hush between heartbeats, the past finally loosened its grip. The garden thawed first. By late March, the snow had retreated into the tree lines, and the soil, dark and heavy with last year's roots, gave way beneath Brooke's spade. She worked with her sleeves rolled and hair knotted low, the sun touching the back of her neck. Beside her, Camilla dropped onion sets into shallow furrows, her small fingers careful and sure. Clara had taken over mending clothes by the hearth, her hands quicker than Brooke remembered. She had stayed longer than first intended, quietly settling into the rhythm of the household. She had not spoken again of Elias, or of the life Brooke had left behind. She had not needed to. Owen returned from the Anders farm that evening, boots muddy and shoulders dusted with sawdust. He leaned his saddle against the barn wall and washed his hands at the pump before stepping onto the porch, where Brooke was slicing dried apples for pie. "You were gone longer than usual," she said, not looking up. "Fence rails snapped down by the creek. Took a while to drag it clear." She nodded, passing him a tin cup of water. "You eat?" "Not yet." She tilted her head toward the house. "There's stew warming." He didn't move, just took a long drink and watched her fingers work the knife. "I was thinking," he said finally. "This land's good for more than potatoes and beans. There's wild grass near the north slope. Could run a few head of cattle if we built up the fencing." She set the knife down. "And you'd stay on?" His answer came without pause. "I would." They stood there for a moment, the air between them steady and unhurried. "I've never worked cattle," she said. "I'll teach you. And if they don't take to the land, then we try something else." That night, while the stew simmered low and the children played checkers near the stove, Clara pulled Brooke aside. "He's not like your first," Clara said, voice quiet. "He doesn't expect you to bend." Brooke leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "He meets me where I stand. Then hold on to that." Later, after the children were asleep and Clara had retired to the loft, Brooke stepped out into the yard. Owen was near the barn again, mending a bridle strap by lantern light. She walked to him, slowly, the hem of her skirt brushing the grass. "I've been thinking too," she said. He didn't look up. "About what?" "About what it would mean to build something with someone who doesn't need to own it to stay." He set the leather down and looked at her fully. "You still worried I'll leave?" "No," she said. "I'm worried I'll forget how to let someone stay." He stood, brushing his hands on his trousers. "Then let me remind you." She stepped into his arms, her forehead resting against his chest. His hand settled at her back, firm and certain. "I want to marry you," he said. Brooke didn't move. "I don't have land of my own," he went on, "but I can build what we need. I'd raise your children like my own. I'd work beside you until my back breaks, and I'd ask nothing but to come home to you." Brooke lifted her face. "I don't have a ring." "I don't need one." Her breath caught. "Then yes." They married in late April under the cottonwoods, the creek running strong behind them. Clara stitched Brooke's dress from muslin she found tucked in the bottom of her trunk. Carver wore a vest Owen had outgrown as a boy, and Camilla carried a basket of wild violets. Reverend Harlan came from town with his Bible and his wife's peach preserves. The neighbors brought bread and blankets and 2 hens as gifts. Nothing grand, nothing borrowed, just the scent of early lilac and the hush of spring wind through the trees. Owen's hand never left Brooke's as they stood beside the water. His vow was simple, spoken low and even. "I will love you as you are, and I will never leave." Brooke's voice was steady when she answered, "And I will not walk alone again." That evening, Clara packed her trunk. She hugged Carver and Camilla, kissed Brooke's cheek, and whispered something in Owen's ear that made him nod solemnly. Then she boarded the wagon north and didn't look back. The days that followed were quiet in a way that filled rather than emptied. Owen and Carver built a chicken run. Brooke taught Camilla how to stitch straight seams. The cattle came in June, 3 lean cows and a calf, purchased with money Owen earned from the Anders job, and a few coins Clara had left wrapped in a handkerchief. They named the calf Juniper, because Camilla said she looked like the bush that grew by the well. By harvest time, the root cellar was full, the barn repaired and whitewashed, and the children's cheeks were brown from sun. Carver had taken to following Owen everywhere, learning to set traps and read the sky. Camilla helped Brooke plant garlic for the next season, her hands small but capable. One night, sitting beneath the stars with Owen's arm around her and both children asleep inside, Brooke said, "I never thought I'd have peace." "You earned it," he said. She turned to him, her hand resting on his chest. "We did." They spent that winter close, the stove burning slow and steady. Owen carved toys for the children from leftover fence rail. Brooke read aloud from the books Clara had left behind. Snow piled high, but the house stayed warm. No one left. No one looked back. And when spring returned, it found them still there together, rooted like the old cottonwoods by the creek, their branches reaching toward a quiet future. steady as the mountains that held them.